I acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land we gather this evening and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin my prepared remarks, I would like to thank two fellow advocacy organisations who represent different communities in Australia. They have released statements of great importance in recent days, and their influence and constituency requires mention in the advocacy address. I thank the Australian Christian Lobby and the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies for your statements declaring your steadfast support to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Armenian Australian community until Australia recognises the Armenian Genocide and all countries which have not recognised the Armenian Genocide do the same. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I will begin by appealing to your imagination. Imagine you are 12-year-old Haig Kayserian of Marduni. Marduni is located in Nagorno-Karabakh, a region you, as Haig, recognise as part of the Armenian Republic of Artsakh, because 99.98% of your elder compatriots voted for Artsakh's independence in 1991. After all, self-determination is your people's right in accordance with international law. The 1991 vote by your fellow Armenians of Artsakh was a vote that rejected Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin's reimagined borders for the region, where he handed historically Armenian territory, together with its Christian Armenian inhabitants, to an iron-fisted Islamic dictatorship in Azerbaijan. A dictatorship sponsored by their big brother Turkey. Haig's teacher, your teacher, Mrs. Vartuhi Agapekyan, describes you as, quote, an excellent student, someone who would think twice before acting and 3 times before speaking, to ensure he does not have to live with regrets of what he did or what he said. It is now April 2nd, 2016, and you are walking to school with your 2 friends. You're probably talking about what you will do in school or after school that day, or what you might do in the coming years or even decades of what will obviously be a very full life. And then, Azerbaijani forces launch fire across the Nagorno-Karabakh border. They target your very school, children. Society's most vulnerable, most precious, society's greatest hope. You, Haig, are hit in the shelling, as are your 2 friends. They survive with serious injuries. You die. 12 years young, your hopes not realised, your dreams gone, your plans for that day, for the years and the decades ahead, no longer even a memory. All of it just dead. Let's please exit this brief imaginary spell and park it for a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 24 hours, Australian media, including Alan Jones of 2GB and the Nine network of newspapers have reported on statements that we received for tonight's event from Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Opposition Leader Bill Shorten. Mr. Morrison's statement in particular has deservedly attracted much attention. First, because he is a sitting Prime Minister, and second, because he is on the record as an avid supporter of Armenian genocide recognition. Despite this, he has added his signature at the bottom of a statement that refers to the Armenian genocide as, quote, horrors that befell the Armenian people, unquote, suggesting the systematic attempt to murder an entire race was some sort of an accident that befell our ancestors. This is just the latest in a long line of euphemisms concocted by Australian bureaucrats at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and fed to prime ministers and other leaders, hoping that their very verbaling of these euphemisms will maintain what is increasingly becoming a cigarette paper thin hope that our diplomatic relations with Turkey has some sort of a genuine quality to them. These euphemisms, which were most recently and unfortunately brought hook, line and sinker by Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Opposition Leader Bill Shorten, come in the place of truth. British journalist Paul Johnson once said that, quote, a euphemism is a human device to conceal the horrors of reality. I prefer American musician Bobby Gentry's explanation that the word euphemism is a euphemism for lying. These euphemisms are empty. Emptiness in words means silence, and silence in geopolitics is deadly. Like the silence that helped kill the Armenians of 1915 when the world kept their focus anywhere except where us, Armenians, Greeks, Assyrians, really wanted it to be. Like the silence that killed the Armenians of Baku, Girovabad and Sumgait before the brave men, women and children, civilians bore arms to prevent another genocide of Armenians. And like the silence that killed Varashag Grigoryan and his fellow victims of the 4-Day War. The 4-Day War was a blitzkrieg operation by Azerbaijan to remove Armenian existence from Armenian lands. It does sound familiar, doesn't it? Just a couple of months before that Marduni attack on Varashag's school, there were tweets and declarations from members of Azerbaijani dictator Ilham Aliyev's regime saying things like, and I quote, the Azerbaijani army will soon prove its superiority over Armenia. The Azerbaijani army will destroy the enemy. We are strengthening our economy and building up our army. We will take the necessary action at any time. When Varashag died, the world was quiet. Despite our own approaches to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australia was also quiet. The international body in charge of bringing peace to the region called on both sides to show restraint. Both sides. Why don't we tell Varashag's friends that their walk to school was interrupted by both sides, when they have probably heard only one side's, Aliyev's, warmongering on Twitter? Tell Varashag's friends that both sides are responsible when only Aliyev threatens to shoot down civilian planes if they use Artsakh's airport. When Aliyev, only Aliyev, jails more journalists than most countries in the world. When only an Aliyev has ruled over the Republic of Azerbaijan in modernity. When Aliyev is proven to have paid bribes to European politicians in exchange for favors. When Aliyev, only Aliyev, appoints his wife as his vice president. When only Aliyev refuses monitoring measures that would determine who has blood on their hands. With Artsakh, like the Armenian genocide, Australia has exercised the empty art of euphemism for truth, silence in place of recognition. It calls on peacemakers to lead the way, while it takes Azerbaijan's side where possible, with carefully crafted verbal linguistics, blinded by the opportunities that might come with their petrodollars. But all this means for humanity is more silence. Silence that breeds impunity for mass murder. Impunity that breeds more murder. I'm not going to lie. There was serious hope from many that Prime Minister Scott Morrison will be the one to end Turkey's gag rule on Australia by releasing an appropriate statement on the eve of this Armenian Genocide Commemoration. We were hoping he would say what we know he believes because he's said it before, especially in light of comments by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan last month threatening to send Australians and New Zealanders home in their coffins like their grandfathers if they disrespect Islam while visiting for Anzac Day in Gallipoli this year. What Australia should be returning to Ankara in coffins are the imported containers of Turkish denial. Enough is enough. Edmund Burke said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Thankfully, as we've seen tonight, we have a record number of good men and women agreeing with us on both sides of federal politics over the last year. Around 20 representations were made in the House of Representatives and the Senate. Motions were moved in parliamentary debates and also through individual statements. People, including Trent Zimmerman, Joel Fitzgibbon, Tim Wilson, Christina Keneally, Rex Patrick, John Alexander, Jason Falinsky, Michael Danby, Erica Betts, Michael Suka, and Julian Lisa were among the many speakers who outright called for Australia to end the cycle of euphemisms, to end the silence, and to recognise the Armenian genocide. This puts the bureaucrats at odds with their own representatives, at odds with representatives that we, the Australian people, have elected. This is a positive sign, ladies and gentlemen. This is how we will bring Australia into line to be on the right side of truth and justice in our battle for recognition of the Armenian genocide and the just rights to self-determination for the Armenians of the Republic of Artsakh. Thank you.